Slow here. Wanted to do another update on Ukraine, and the reason we're doing the update is we've been reading a United Nations report from the High Commissioner for Human Rights about various documented activities that were going on in Ukraine during the civil war, so from sort of 2014 right up until the present day. And I think that document's quite interesting because it provides quite a high degree of credibility to some of the claims that have been made by Russia, and also indicates that some of the footage that we've seen is probably genuine because there is a track record and the kind of abuse that we've seen through these various videos on social media. So let's just start with this was a video from ASB military, which was a group of civilians in Mariupol asking for the Ukrainian military to take away their weapons because the weapons were positioned next to houses and schools. And in our great free society, a few days after making that video and distributing it on Twitter, ASB military account was banned from Twitter. So this is obviously not something that the powers that be wanted us to see, essentially. So how realistic was that claim, basically? Is it even vaguely realistic? So going into that report then from the High Commissioner for Human Rights, I won't read the whole paragraph. I mean, it's here and I'll give you the link to the report. It's quite a long report and they come out every 3 months or so. This is one from 2016, but similar things have gone all the way through to 2020. I just focused on this 2016 one because it was the first one I opened. So this is quite literally what it says. OHCHR, which is the Office for the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights, documented extensive use of civilian buildings and locations by the Ukrainian military and the Azov regiment and looting of civilian property leading to displacement. So, you know, this is a modus operandi. This was done before, that they are using civilian buildings to locate their equipment, which is a very significant breach of international humanitarian law. So that there is history in doing this. And then also specifically about the hospital question, that was a big debate with, of course, everyone accusing the Russians of being sort of mass murderers and war criminals by the bombing around the Mariupol hospital. So here again, you know, looking at the UN report from 2016, this is quite literally what it says. In Volnovacha, Ukrainian armed forces were stationed in close proximity to a local hospital. OHCHR recalls that hospitals are specifically protected under Article 11 of Additional Protocol 2 to the Geneva Conventions, which are binding on the warring parties. Now, basically what that says is you cannot have military equipment near hospitals, and if you do have that near or in hospitals, then basically the warring parties can give notice that that has become a military target. And if nothing changes, then that hospital becomes a military target because of the location of armed forces there. So again, you know, this is the track record, this is the history of cynically using hospitals by the Ukrainian armed forces. So again, it makes the Russian explanation of that situation in Mariupol that much more likely because this has been a historic fact. And then again, just looking at the Western propaganda around this, here's another major propaganda agent, and we've looked already at the completely fake videos and information sent out by Anders Osland and Andrew Neil, but this is now another member of this group, Carl Bildt, with sending out a massive attack. Pure destruction seems to be the objective. Now, it didn't take more than 5 minutes of internet searching to look at the Russian version of what went on in this Kiev shopping center. And this is a video footage. This is just a still that shows a Grad rocket launcher moving underneath the shopping center. And then in one of the other images, there's a whole row of these rocket launchers placed specifically underneath the shopping center. So, this is Russian footage. I don't have any particular reason to doubt it. It looked reasonably genuine. Nobody knows for sure, but it looked genuine. So, again, this is a misrepresentation, a failure to even acknowledge any kind of logical explanation for this bombing, which the Russian TV also showed. They showed that after all the rocket launchers were placed in this shopping center, they did blow it up, and it's actually not it's not a shopping center, it's a wholesale center, so there would have been nobody in it at the time. But again, there's a valid reason for doing this, and they didn't hide that. The valid reason is this was being used for rocket launches, but as part of the sort of propaganda campaign and the campaign to generate more hatred against Russia, Carl Bildt would never mention that, although, as I said, within 5 minutes of internet search, that would be easy to establish why that building had been bombed. But no mention of that anywhere in this tweet, basically. And as we said before, because of the platform of people who you would think would be trustworthy but who are not trustworthy, those platforms end up with thousands and thousands of likes and shares, whereas the sort of explanation has no traction whatsoever. And that is actually part of the whole sort of social media system also being geared up to promote things that are on message and delete or hide things that are off message. And then going on now into some of the worst videos that we've seen about the abuse of prisoners of war, really terrible footage. Again, looking back at this report from 2016, I'm going to read a couple of these cases of documented allegations against the Ukrainian Security Service. I'm just going to read this one, basically. After his arrest, he was reportedly kept in the basement of the local college and regularly beaten. He was transferred to the town of Izium, where he was kept in a basement together with 12 other detainees. He claimed having witnessed a summary execution while there. So this is someone who's been captured from the eastern regions as a member of an armed group and been held by the Ukrainian Security Service. So this is, according to this interview, which is included in the High Commission for Human Rights report, this is what goes on there, a summary execution. And then here's just one more of those before we wrap up. This is a slightly longer one, but it's from the same report from 2016. In another case, a pro-federalism, which is essentially the separatists, activists from Odessa, charged, it's wrong here, but it's what it says, of acts of terrorism, was pressured to sign a confession after being tortured at the Odessa SBU, which is the security service. During his interrogation, he was reportedly suffocated with a plastic bag covering his head and was beaten on the face, head and body. The SBU officers then allegedly took him to the lobby of the SBU building, where he was shown his son, whom they had also arrested. His son was taken to a separate room and the father could hear his harrowing screams. And then it goes on. There's many of these examples, and just so you don't think this finishes in 2016, I'll just read you a quick section of an update from 2020. 57 of the 75 individuals reported having been subjected to torture or ill treatment, mainly perpetrated by SBU officials to extract confessions or information and or to punish or intimidate. Methods of torture and ill treatment included beatings, asphyxiation, dry and wet, electric shocks, sexual violence, such as forced nudity and violence to the genitals. So that is what the SBU does. And when we see in this video that we spoke about before, the incredible cruelty to the prisoners of war, Again, the track record of this going from 2016 all the way up to 2020 now makes this a lot more credible, this video. And as I said also before, it has made it into the New York Post, so it's presumably been validated to some extent. And of course, the blue and yellow flag wavers, Slava Ukraina people, don't bat an eyelid. In fact, they sort of double down. And one of the talking heads on media actually said, yeah, big deal, it's a war. I mean, big deal shooting bound prisoners of war through the legs, no big deal. I find it truly amazing. You have to wonder what's happened to the UK and all this Ukrainian madness, basically. So just wrapping up, basically, I think if you watched a few of our videos, and obviously if you've read anything yourselves, which almost certainly you have done if you're on this channel, we all understand that the sort of good guys versus bad guys, black versus white, MSM narrative, and the narrative that is pushed by our ludicrous politicians like Liz Truss, it's completely false. We've always said right from the beginning, what's clearly obvious in this conflict is it is different shades of grey. There is no black and white here. We also see now, and we've exposed on the other videos, that the key accounts through social media like Andrew Neil, Anders Osland, are sending out completely fake information. We looked at that video of the armed soldiers pointing machine guns at civilians, who then turned out to be Ukrainian armed soldiers pointing guns at unarmed civilians from East Ukraine. So the exact opposite of what these people were pretending. And then our conclusion is, having looked at a few bits of information, the regime of Zelensky is completely corrupt. I think those examples, although they were from 2016, we went through, they go on to 2020. So, parts of this security apparatus are completely out of control. And as we've seen before and said before, there is a meaningful fascist influence within the armed forces. Now, in putting this together, we haven't provided balance because similar charges have been leveled at the Donetsk People's Republic security services there. But I think you're overloaded with anti-Russia propaganda 24/7. So this is a tiny little alternative window to show the other side of the story. So it's worth saying that similar charges have been leveled against the Donetsk People's Republic security services. But the point of this was to show what the Ukrainian security services are up to. So just wrapping up, I think what we're seeing here again, and we've seen this through COVID, is this sort of mass formation psychosis, which the fact checkers say does not exist, but it's a huge propaganda campaign, 24/7, same message on every single channel, including alternative media. Ukraine good, Russia bad, and as I said before, it doesn't work like that. And this is actually quite dangerous when you have this essentially brainwashing people, not interested in establishing any facts. They just go for this really infantile good versus bad argument, and then they'll come out on the street. Now, this demonstration, because it's government approved, will be covered and has been covered on every single mainstream media outlet. But for those of us involved in anti-lockdown demonstrations, we know that those get absolutely zero coverage because they're not on message. So, this whole media complex is just really trumpeting government messaging. There's no element of real media in mainstream media anymore. And for us, this kind of brainwashing, I guess, is kind of dangerous. And as one of our colleagues on another YouTube channel noted, the left at the moment are basically foot soldiers for the globalists. For some reason, the left, particularly this genius here, the Mayor of London, latches on to any sort of COVID masking, vaccinating narrative that the globalists are pushing at any one time, and has dutifully fallen in line with the Ukraine narrative as well. So I think that's all we wanted to say today. We're trying to provide some balance for the ludicrous black and white picture you get from mainstream media. Looking at that, the UN report from the High Commission for Human Rights, you see there's been a lot of very, very bad behavior on the Ukrainian side, and as I said, a lot of those accusations go to the Donbass side as well, but the point of this was to provide the balance to what you would see otherwise in the mainstream media. And this is different shades of grey, it's not black and white. So hopefully you found this interesting. I think the last few videos, for us at least, have helped to create a fairly complete picture of what's going on in Ukraine. And it's not a pretty picture. This is not a struggling, innocent, clean as a whistle democracy fighting the dark forces of Russia. It's much more complicated than that. Hope you found this interesting. Thank you very much. Bye.